No rules. No rules. No taboo topics. No taboo topics. No fear of doom. No fear of doom. We are American Freedom Radio. American Freedom Radio.
Well, let's live our lives. That's what it's all about. That's why we're here. But we just keep getting sucked back in. Just when you think you're out, they pull you back in. Thank you for joining us. Second hour of the Jack Blood Show coming at you right now. It is allegedly the 26th day of March 2012, Monday. Scott Horton was great. He, by the way, if you heard the Liberty stickers commercial there, he wrote a lot of the slogans for Liberty stickers, thousands of them. Pretty smart guy. And we're proud to have him here in Austin, Texas. I'm glad he's my friend. Larry Pinkney is with us. Over the weekend, I think it was Friday, the headlines just coming in fast and furious. Of course, one of them, the new Black Panthers offer a $10,000 bounty for the capture of shooter George Zimmerman in the Trayvon Martin case, the alleged self-defense shooting in Florida. Certainly, the investigation was derailed, and we think it's because that George Zimmerman's dad was a judge. And he was protected, as usual, with the selective enforcement of laws. And it wasn't a racism case. But this, of course, hasn't stopped the Reverend Jesse Jackson, the Reverend Al Sharpton, and all the others from trying to exploit this, of course, for their own benefit. And in the process, they are, of course, creating this massive racial division, racial tension in the country. And there's going to be more marches. This carried on all through the weekend and all the morning shows. And this is how they set the tempo for the news of the week. This is not going away. It is getting worse. So Larry Pinkney, a actual Black Panther from the old Black Panther Party, a good friend of the show from blackcommentator.com, has joined us on the show today to help break this thing down. So I'm sorry, we got to talk about this a little bit more, but we got to set the record straight. And Larry, thank you so much for joining us today so we could do that.
Jack, thank you. You know, you're my brother and my friend, and I thank you so much for having me on the program.
Well, we got to do this, and that's just how it goes. See, I'm the loss for words as a talk show host. That's always a crazy thing. What is it about this case as opposed to the cases here in Austin where the cops shoot unarmed black youths? That's not a big national story. I don't see the Reverend down here involved in that. But what is it about this? Is it the fact that, you know, we got liberals who hate guns? Is it the fact that they're just there to exploit it? Is it the fact that this kid was a teenager? That this was, you know, just a completely unnecessary action, an unnecessary death? It is outrageous. But what is it that makes these guys just be attracted to this like leeches to blood?
Well, to be blunt, I think you've hit on one of the key things, and that's to exploit a situation. The other thing that I want to add, the other word I want to use is to distraction. So we have two things. I mean, let's put this, the horrible Trayvon Martin tragedy and so many other tragedies that affect people, by the way, of all colors throughout this nation. Let's put this in perspective. The fact is that we have, from the chief executive, Barack Obama, to the legislature, to the judiciary, we have a warmongering, rotten, filthy, hypocritical, and corrupt corporate-owned political system. And, you know, if anything that the system, or what I call, and the system and its gatekeepers can do to distract people, everyday, ordinary people, from the real deal, this is what they're going to do. And I want to repeat, the horrible Trayvon Martin tragedy is like so many other tragedies, so many others affecting people of all colors. And, you know, the so-called groups like, and I don't want to give them, frankly, I don't want to give them any publicity, so I'm going to say this very quickly. Groups like the so-called New Black Panthers, which are fraudulent, okay, groups like them are about the business of inciting color and ethnic hatred for their own purposes. Color and ethnic hatred. They're not about the business of serving the people, as we said in the Black Panther Party, serve the people body and soul. clear about that. They're not the only ones. There are more than enough other folks who are out there of all colors doing this, trying to do the same thing. So I don't want to give them, I don't even want to really talk about them, but I had to say that. Then when he gets, go ahead.
So go ahead. We know who we're dealing with here because we've had several incidents over the years with this new Black Panther Party from them guarding the polls and trying to scare people off who might not vote for Obama. In other words, white people, and they were protected by the Justice Department. They've got this bounty here, which is they called for the mobilization of 5,000 black men to capture George Zimmerman. I mean, they're saying that Zimmerman is this vigilante, but this is a perfect example of vigilanteism here. And then they're offering this $10,000 reward for his capture. How do they get away with it?
Well, they get away with it because this system, first of all, gives them attention. Now, you have to ask yourself, why is the corporate stream media even giving these individuals, this band of folks, attention? There has to be a reason. Again, I go back to exploiting the situation to distract everyday black, white, brown, red, and yellow people from the real issues that we face. And you know, as the Huey P. Newton Foundation, which comes from the real and original Black Panther Party, which was decimated by the end of the 80s, before most of these people were even born. But the fact is, what was said by the Huey P. Newton Foundation out of California, this was written collectively by Black Panther Party veterans such as myself. It asks a question about these people. It says, who are these people who are laying claim to the party's history and name? Are they reactionary provocateurs who would instigate activities counterproductive to the people's interests, causing mayhem and death? Are they entertainers who would posture themselves before the media? What's their agenda? I mean, let's use our common sense. Those are direct quotes from the Huey P. Newton, Dr. Huey P. Newton Foundation, and you know, from Black Panther Party veterans. Now, you know, the fact of the matter is that we cannot allow ourselves to be sidetracked by this system's BS. I think I can say that on the air, right? Well, it's that.
Yeah.
Okay. just so long as I don't say the full word. The bottom line is that we have to pay attention to what's really going on. What is the juggler doing? Do pay attention to the man behind the curtain, as they say from The Wizard of Oz. They say pay no attention. We say, on the other hand, pay all attention. Give your attention. Find out who's really behind this. Let me give another example. Jesse Jackson running around talking about, quote, blacks are under attack, unquote. What a pompous, lopsided, and irresponsible thing to say. Of course blacks are under attack, but the fact is that everyday people of all colors, I repeat, of all colors, are under attack. And black people, yes, we are experiencing the brunt of it, but this is not something that's confined strictly to black people. What statements like this do, and what they're designed to do, is to play on the pain, the terrible pain of everyday people. And what they do, what these kinds of statements do, is to pit people one against the other, to keep people distrustful, to keep people in fear, to keep people in a state of uncertainty, when exactly the opposite is what we need to be doing. Regardless to what our political ideologies may or may not be, we need to be collectively working together and understand that it is the system that has got people of all colors under attack. I am truly outraged that people like Jackson and Sharpton, get away with these things, but they don't have to. We don't have to let them get away. We need to hold them accountable for their crap. They need to be held accountable for it, because what they're trying to do is to set themselves up as the leaders, and they're not leaders. The people are the leaders. The people. You know, so that's my response to that, Jack.
You look at the difference between the real African-American leaders from the 60s and then these guys saying an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, and then we harken back to Gandhi's quote, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. We all were raised, our mothers told us, hopefully told us, two wrongs don't make a right, but that's really how the whole thing works. It's the Hegelian dialectic, as you know, you're putting together, problem, reaction, thesis, and antithesis together, and antithesis, and synthesizing those things into what? Hatred of each other, not hatred of the government, not hatred of the controllers, not hatred of the people that make us all slaves and indentured servants, Larry, but hatred of each other, and that's really what this is about. And I wonder if the Obama administration helping to exploit this and looking the other way while other people do, which makes them culpable, in my opinion, by not denouncing this division, this racial division of which they are muckraking in, is a setup to make this election black versus white, as well as 99% versus 1%, as well as all the other little memes that they put out there. And I think that maybe that's because a lot of people in the African-American community, they don't love Obama like they used to. And maybe this is something that can kind of push them closer to voting for him out of race and not because he's the best man for the job.
Well, I think that's crystal clear. I think everything you've said, Jack, is already quite clear. It's crystal clear. I mean, let's look at a part of the statement that Barack Obama made. You know, if he had a son, this son would have looked like Trayvon Martin. Okay, I mean, again, what a ridiculous. This is supposed to be the chief executive, the president of the United States, making. I mean, for all of us. Exactly. Making this kind of statement that does nothing to bring about a collective healing process, does nothing to say, wait a minute, we've got to stop, take stock of this situation and look at this systemically. Of course, he's not going to say systemically because he's part of the system and he's the chief executive of it, just like the gatekeepers such as Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson. And then this band of, I won't even name them anymore because they just don't deserve it. These band of other people out here trying to incite hatred, incite division. So I think you're absolutely correct. I think it's self-evident, quite frankly, that this is being used. It is being utilized. You're absolutely correct also that there are a number, and I'd like to see more, but there are a number of black people, black Americans, African Americans, take your pick, but there are a number of black people throughout this country who are reassessing and saying, wait a minute, maybe I better take another look at this, and who are beginning, operative word, to say, I better look at this not on the basis of color, but I better look at this on the basis, as Dr. King said, of character or the lack thereof.
Yeah, for every Jay-Z, there might be a KRS-One out there. I'll tell you a funny story, Larry. My friend's a limo driver for celebrities in Los Angeles, and he had John Legend in the back of his car once, and they don't tip, and, I mean, there's a lot of bad things I could say about them as people, but he was making a lot of racial anti-white comments while my friend overheard him, and he says, look, Jack, I mean, this guy's a big Obama supporter and this is how he feels. And then you look at the Obama administration and you say, well, what happened before he even was selected in 2008? I do mean selected. Was
That's
that
right.
Anyone that opposed him, anyone that revealed and pulled the curtain back to see who this guy really was and who he was affiliated with and who he worked with, and I'm not talking about birther stuff or whatever. That could be valid. That's not my forte, Larry. But I do know, he's in bed with Zbigniew Brzezinski and George Soros and some people who just don't want this country to continue on with the success that it's had and don't like our freedoms and love this global police state. And so you talk about that, and what are you? You're a racist. They started this, and the racial division in this country, I don't think, has been greater since I was a kid.
You're absolutely. I feel precisely the same. I sense the same thing. I see the same thing. The color, and I say color and ethnicity because we are one race. We are the human race. And I'm not going to let the system suck me in. If at all possible, I'm not going to be sucked in. The bottom line is that we are more disunited now than we ever were. And as a people, and that is to say all people of all colors. And we have the great, quote, and these are heavy quotation marks around the word great, the great opportunist, Barack Obama, and, his supporters who show a total lack, L-A-C-K, of leadership for the people of the people. These people are not leaders. They are misleaders and opportunists. And they demonstrate it. I mean, why do I say this? Look at the actions that these folks take. On one hand, we're told, it's all of us together. On the other hand, we look at the actions, and it's anything but being all together. What it's really about is how can I exploit the emotions, the pain, the feelings of everyday black, white, brown, red, and yellow people. We don't have any hope and change. We have a rope and chain, not hope and change. And this man never represented hope and change before he was selected and then installed. And he had big corporations backing him. But that was kept very quiet, wasn't it? What was emphasized by the corporate stream media? Oh, you have millions and millions of people giving their $10, $15, and $20 donations. Obama should never have even accepted them because he already had millions and millions and millions from corporations like Lockheed, etc.
A deal. That was actually accepting donations and money on a fraudulent basis. That's fraud, I guess. We have to go to break here. Larry Pinkney with us. BlackCommentator.com is where he writes. We'll be doing more on this story, giving you some facts and not just rhetoric on the Jack Blood Show. Stay with us. Well, you just can't be asleep anymore. There's too much to do, and we're going to help you do that any way we can. It's the Jack Blood Show. I'm Jack Blood. Joining us here in the second hour of the show today is our friend Larry Pinkney. He's a former Black Panther. And we had Larry scheduled for next month, but when this whole case kind of broke open, I knew we had to get Larry on and to talk about this. And specifically, the thing I just got to wonder, and we'll drop this after this, Larry, but, how do these new Black Panthers get away? If you guys out there, you real Black Panthers are not for this, not with these guys, how do they get away using the name? How do they get away with all this stuff?
Well, we actually, some of the veterans of the party actually did file a suit in terms of them, this band of raiders, as I call them, using the name. At this point, the last thing I'm aware of with respect to that suit is that it has not prevailed. In other words, at this point on a legal level, they may still be able to get away with it. But it's not really the legal level that concerns us or concerns me. What concerns me is the propaganda use of the name. The name has been stolen and has been expropriated, and it has been done so by a bunch of people who don't have the credentials. When I say credentials, I'm talking about street cred credentials, who were organizers, who were there. It was done by a bunch of people who have taken advantage of the serious struggle that went on in the 60s, 70s, and 70s. And this is something that, on one hand, we watch. We are aware of what this band of whatever you want to call them, this band does. On the other hand, we don't give them a great deal of attention. We stay aware of their actions and inactions. And this is an indication, meaning the fact that these people pop up. If you notice, Jack, they always pop up whenever there's some kind of heart-wrenching, terrible tragedy. For example, they popped up, remember the guy who was dragged to his death, black guy in Texas? His last name was Byrd, B-Y-R-D. Well, guess who popped up? the same band of, of folks talking about how terrible this was. Okay, and what they were going to do and blah, blah, blah. We say, where are your programs to serve the people? Where are your we had national breakfast food programs, national clinic programs for free medical care, clothing programs. We meant it when we said serve the people, body and soul. We meant it. And by the way, when I say we, I'm talking about the actual Black Panther Party founded in October of 1966. We had alliances with black, white, brown, red, and yellow organizations. Most notably, SDS, Peace and Freedom Party, which were white primarily, and the White Panther Party, which came into existence as a direct result of the Black Panther Party. And veterans of the White Panther Party stay in touch with us as we do with them. We have a very strong affection and love for them as they do for us. So, but then you have the so-called new Black Panthers, I'll say it again, you have the so-called new Black Panthers who clearly they are anti-white, they are really, as far as we're concerned, anti-human. Because if you love black people, then you have to first and foremost, frankly, love all people. I can't pick and choose and say, oh, I love that brother or sister. Oh, but I hate them. Well, why? Because they're different colors. No, I can't. No. That's hypocrisy, and it makes, a mockery of everything. So I hope I've in some way enlightened the listeners to the reality of this. There is an article online. People can Google it, and I hope that they will, and then I'll shut up about this, but I hope they'll Google the article. You've seen it, Jack. It's called There Is No New Black Panther Party.
Yeah, I'm going to post that up at deadlinelive.info later today. Well, look, and then just the last part on this, and then I want to move on to kind of the facts of this case so that people can talk when they're talking to their relatives or their friends or their coworkers, what have you. They'll have some of that information. But, just say, for instance, that I put out a bounty, a cash bounty for the arrest or for the killing even of, I don't know, maybe these black teenagers that poured gasoline on a white boy, or maybe these beat whitey riots that have been happening in Philadelphia and in Wisconsin. You see, I think that a lot of people, and this kind of feeds into this racial division, feel that they don't get fair representation, fair treatment, that these cases aren't treated with the same seriousness as this Trayvon Martin case was. Do you have, what if, hey, look, we know Henry Kissinger is a mass genocidal killer. Can I put a bounty out for him? Can I do that?
I'd love to. No, you can't.
But what would happen to me if I did that? Or even Obama himself, who's killed Americans. It's a double standard. All of this is a double standard. So I think that also feeds into racial division, because if the media only cares about Trayvon Martin and don't care about, this little boy who was burned, set on fire, in a case of racial, and there was, verbiage and witnesses, or the woman that was beaten in Philadelphia by a group of African-American girls for some kind of initiation, or these roving, wilding Tex mob teens that go running through the streets and beating up people. We just hear these every day, and it's happening more and more, Larry. But then that doesn't get any play in the media. I think it really creates even more division by doing that. At least cover these cases fairly.
Well, it's meant to, let's be blunt, it's meant to create division. That's precisely what it's meant. The corporate stream media could give a you-know-what left as to really keeping people informed. The corporate stream media dropped the ball years ago, dropped it totally. They're eating crow. It's ridiculous. And it's not, to me, it's not just a question of the atrocious act that people practice against, have practiced against one another. It's also a question of showing the acts of unity that blacks, whites, browns, red, yellow folks in this nation are also engaging in. If you notice, the corporate stream media stays away from that. And as much as my heart goes out to Trayvon Martin and his family, and it does, the fact of the matter is that I know that we live in a very violent society. Violence is glorified. It's glorified on television, by Hollywood, in video games, etc. I mean, the American psyche is systemically saturated with the glorification of violence. And that's not just on one side or the other. It's across the board. And so if we're going to address something, I do agree, let's address it fairly. Let's address it in a balanced fashion. And let's also have some suggestions as to what we can do and should be doing, because the government sure as hell is not going to do it. Okay? What we, everyday, ordinary, common folk can do to change this insanity, because that's what it is.
Well, part of what we can do is people like you, Larry, and me and my audience and your people can march shoulder to shoulder here, if that's necessary, and stand up for freedom for all people. We look at this. We just have been talking about the Democrats and how they've been using this racial division in order to, help themselves through elections and help themselves through some of their legislation. And unfortunately, again, the African-American community, I guess, doesn't see or doesn't care about the NDAA, and maybe that's too much of a generalization, but they're colorblind in this case, or that's all they see. So, but we look at the Republicans, and what do they always say? Well, we got to get Muslims. All Muslims are bad, and, all brown people. And then what about the Hispanics, of which George Zimmerman could be counted among them? So, on both sides, we've got a massive racial pimping, racial posturing for division's sakes, and then of course they'll always come in with the solution, which is, well, you got to be careful of these Hispanics, so you better all get ID, you better all get on these work lists and E-Verify, and you better get ID to vote, and all of this kind of stuff, and you got to keep marijuana illegal, and these were all the evils and the devils out there that if a black man smoked marijuana, he'd go out raping white women, and they'd use this fear in order to what? Drive through their anti-freedom legislation and to tighten the reins of control around our necks, Larry.
That is correct. I mean, that's what, in fact, as Phil Restino, dear friend, with Veterans for Peace in Florida put it, what this government does is it essentially trains people to act as, or brainwashes people to act as judge, jury, and executioner. As long as we do that against each other, why, the government is pleased. I don't give a damn whether they're Democrat or Republican. I call them Republicrats. But the instant we begin to collectively come together, hammer out our issues, because we will have issues. We're not going to agree about everything, because, I always say if people agree 100% of the time, then somebody's lying. We're going to hammer out our issues. We're going to learn collectively from one another, and that's what this is about. The NDAA, what I call the indefinite detention law, quite frankly, most people, be they black, white, or turquoise, do not even know. I'm talking about in this country. There are more people in Europe and Asia and Africa that know about the NDAA, the indefinite detention law that Obama signed on New Year's Eve of 2011, where Americans in this country can be held indefinitely without trial, judge, jury, any due process, and basically disappear.
On that level, we're all in this together. That is certainly something, and I hope that, and I do see more people becoming aware of this, and more people speaking out because of that. So here we go. But what did they use in order to impeach Ron Paul? Legally impeach, but to, kind of shuffle him to the side of the heap. The only one talking about ending the wars and ending this police state legislation was just to call him a racist. And it worked.
Well, of course it worked. That's the whole point. Of course it worked, and it's going to keep on working until people say no more. We've had it. No more. We're not going to go for that anymore. Enough already. And it's like I mentioned, I think, on your show the last time, where people talk, yeah, I've heard it. Ron Paul's supposed to be a racist. Right, but they love, and I'm not saying right, that's correct. I'm saying, so that means that Robert Byrd of West Virginia, who's a Ku Klux Klan organizer and was an esteemed U.S. senator from West Virginia, oh, he's cool, right? And when I say that to blacks, they don't know who I'm talking about even, okay? But he was a Democrat, okay? And my point is that the hypocrisy of it all, the hypocrisy is what we need to cut through. And the only way we're going to cut through it is by having direct communications, and I mean direct, with each other, because the government fears that. And what they fear lets us know that we're on the right track.
That's right. Well, we need the government to fear us and not the other way around. That provides us liberty. George Zimmerman, by the way, this is the truth of the matter. This is not a guy I want in my neighborhood. Either way, Larry, okay? This is the neighborhood Nazi, the wannabe cop whose dad was a judge, which is why we think the shooting or manslaughter in this case, if that's what it is, because we don't know if Trayvon Martin, and I'm sorry to have to say this, might have not provoked this guy when he was following him around. But this is a neighborhood Nazi. I mean, this is a fascist. This is not the guy I want in my neighborhood who's constantly calling 911 and trying to enforce the codes and is your garage door open or closed, or is your garbage can in the right place? I mean, this guy's a menace to the neighborhood. We would not allow that in my neighborhood, I know. And why was it allowed in this neighborhood? Maybe because it was a gated community, maybe because of that fear that you speak about, that they want somebody, okay, they'll put up with him because maybe he's keeping them safer in some way. But he's taking their liberties, and now he's killed somebody because of this. But it wasn't because that he's a racist or the police were racist in any way, and not because this kid was black. It's because George Zimmerman, an adopted kid, I guess, was given preferential treatment because his dad was a judge. That's what it was, and that's how everything works, man.
That's why I called it, you notice I said earlier in the program, I said the system is corrupt from top to bottom, executive, legislative, and judicial. Okay, and it is. Here's an example of the corruptness of the system, right? It's corrupt.
Well, and the media is the fourth estate. You've named correctly the three branches of government, but the fourth estate, that's not technically a branch of government, the media, has gone along with this and exploited. This is why, again, we got to talk about this on a Monday, because this thing has legs. It went all through the weekend. It was on every morning show. It was the topic of discussion all through the weekend, Larry. And they are trying to rile people up. They're not going to drop this because, look, we know that if Al Sharpton is out speaking, someone's going to donate money to him to protect black people. That's how he poses it. All right, we got a final segment here with Larry Pinkney from blackcommentator.com. And we're going to go ahead and take your phone calls if you'd like to call in and add to this. I got to think that people have a lot of opinions on this, and we're not going to do this to you all week because I know that the media is. But I wanted to put it on the record once and for all. We did this on our TV show for the full hour. I never do that. But this is it's such a poignant case because it just points out so much, which Larry has done a great job doing his diagnosis of. So we will take your calls. If you have something to add to any of this, go ahead and give us a call at 218-339-8525, 218-339-8525. This isn't a case about guns and using your Second Amendment right or being able to defend yourself or your neighborhoods. Of course, they're going to make it that. Chucky Schumer, these guys are jumping on this. There are more exploiters out there exploiting this terrible situation because the kid's dead. We don't know if, George Zimmerman had seen this black kid, and because of all of this hatred going around, was in fear himself, and maybe that's why he pulled the trigger. We don't know if this was covered up, and it looks like it was because he was connected. We do know that he had these little fascist tendencies. If you see something, say something, right? And this is what all Americans are being trained to do now by Homeland Security. We do know that he tried to get in law enforcement. That in 2008, he took a 4-month law enforcement program. For some reason, they didn't let him in. I would assume it's because he probably wasn't that stable. He sounds a little bit, Larry, like a spoiled rich kid in some capacities. Here he is wanting to be a controller, wanting to be the guy with the gun and the badge, but he couldn't get one. So what did he do? He became not these guys with code enforcement or these meter maids or whatever, or the TSA guys who couldn't get a job in the military or in law enforcement, but now they've got all this power and a badge, and they're going to use it to do whatever they want to Americans. This is the society we live in, Larry.
Exactly. And this is what we cannot tolerate. This must be reversed. We must reverse this. I'm going to use that word, freedom. That's what we have. If we're going to get any kind of freedom, it's going to have to be we ourselves who get it.
And what does it say about, again, putting bounties on people? We had a football coach who did that for the New Orleans Saints. He got caught, and they were putting a bounty on players and giving their players a couple of bucks if they put a crushing hit on another player, especially a quarterback. And he's been banned from football for a year for doing that. And that's part of the game, actually. But this other game, they changed the rules. So, there are no rules. If there's nothing that applies equally to all of us, and that's what people, when they say social justice, I wish they meant that, but I think they mean preferential social justice sometimes. Mm-hmm. But, if the game isn't level, if there isn't a level playing field for all of us in this so-called game of politics and law enforcement, they used to be peace officers. Remember that, Larry?
Yes, I do. What a joke.
Then it's not equal to all of us. Let me go to Tim in Washington. I believe that's Washington, D.C., because it's 301. Tim, you're live.
What's happening, man?
Thanks for joining us.
What's going on, man?
How you doing?
Good.
I just chimed in there for a couple of minutes. This Trayvon Martin thing, I don't have all the facts, but what I will say, I'm reserving my total judgment until I see how it played out, but it just seemed like a psyop. When you can make things out of a racial situation, there's always something behind this 8-ball that just doesn't sit right. And when I heard the president got involved, talking about if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon, I was done. I was done.
Tim, do you remember?
Would you believe that?
Hold on. Do you remember the beer summit when the president got involved with the professor who, the cops had come to his house and he freaked out and they ended up arresting him? And before the alleged president, Obama, got all the facts, he came out fully for this black professor at Harvard. And then we found out the facts, and then he had the beer summit with the police to try to mend fences there.
It's a psyop. The real issue, now I tell people, I got a buddy of mine who I talk to, I said, when they came out and signed the NDAA bill, how come nobody got up in arms about that? Even when it comes to an Afghan war, we're still over there. How come nobody's protesting on the real issue? This is a sideshow. It's a sideshow. Man, somebody's life has been taken in this event, and I really do feel for his family. But I'm looking at the whole issue. It's a side-up. When you get the president involved, because he's black, you got to pick a side. They want you to pick a side.
Yeah.
George Carlin said it best. Even when y'all played between the commercials.
That was perfect.
And when they can make issues to look at your differences, the rich guys, they keep going to the bank. Mm-hmm. If we sit here fighting amongst each other about race, sexuality, religion, all, it's a psyop.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, and thank you for the call, Tim. Larry, that's what we were talking about. Not to get us to kind of to herd us here, to herd the masses, and to divide us, but a distraction because it's sucking up all of the oxygen in the mainstream media so that they're not reporting on anything else, or maybe we're all talking about this and not something else. We remember right before 9/11 that all the media would talk about was the Chandra Levy murder or what happened to her and Larry and what's his name, Condit. And Condit, of course, was, as we found out later, anti-war. It would have been Anti-Patriot Act, and they almost took this guy out before 9/11 happened. But that sucked up all the oxygen in the media, Larry, and we weren't able to focus on the impending doom that was about to visit this country on September 11th.
And again, I submit to you, Jack, and to the listening audience, I submit that these things are deliberately. The corporate stream media, their job is not to inform. Their job is to misinform and to distract. That's their job.
And where are these people, all these people concerned? And yes, okay, I know we have to say this, put this disclaimer. We're sorry for the Trayvon Martin family. I think we should be sorry for the George Martin family, the George Zimmerman family, and everybody caught up in this, sure. But where is... You know, we remember Rodney King and all of that, and maybe that was another psyop and that definitely was a psyop and a distraction, and it worked, okay? But you know, here we had a couple of kids, African-American kids that were shot in a car. The officers not only let go and not charged with homicide in this case, which I think they should have been, but, they're just doing their job because they're protecting the neighbor. They're George Zimmerman, these cops, but they're real cops with badges, and they killed these one kid and shot up the other one. And one of the officers, Nathan Wagner, had the gumption to try and sue this kid for damages that he shot. And where is the outrage on that? You see, where is the outrage? And the police don't just treat African Americans and minorities like they treat poor people like this. They treat people who have tattoos and look weird, and they treat us all the same way. If we don't fit with the status quo, noose-wearing society, and you know, we can't be put into this conservative kind of a box or the status quo establishment box, then we're going to be punished, right?
Right.
I mean, you know,
that is right.
all of us.
That is right. I mean, Jack.
Go ahead.
You're right. You're right. I mean, you know, there was a man who was, in fact, he was a veteran, and he was beaten to death by the police. By the way, he was white. He was beaten to death. You hear me? By the police. This was in California some months ago. I'm very pleased to say that my sisters and brothers out there in California got involved in it. It wasn't just about Oscar Grant. But we said, and we still say, this will not be tolerated. This is wrong. Nobody said, oh, he's white. No, he's human, and this will not.
Talk about, you know, nuclear waste being dumped into poor communities full of minorities. That's never an issue because the Obama administration is in their neck up to the nuclear industry. Tougher for them than ever before. Hey, I got time for 2 quick calls, so I think this might be our buddy Phil Restino in area code 386. Put something on the record and let me take one more call, Phil. How you doing?
Oh, hi, Jack. Hi, Larry. Glad you guys are talking about this. I know I better be quick. I wanted to throw a little devil advocate here. You know, this guy was not arrested, you know, and like you said, there's reasons for it as the dust settles. But I'm here with the local Occupy people who I think are and a lot of good people are speaking up because they're seeing an injustice, you know. And I am totally on board with the politicians and the media and
but Phil, let me
doing their thing.
Are the Occupy people upset because this is racism, and they're falling into the company line, or because again George Zimmerman's dad is a retired judge in the very town that all the cops knew? See, that's it.
I think that information didn't really come out. I think that's been pretty quiet. The latter. So I just wanted to run that out and see what you guys think of that, about good people. Just an injustice anywhere is an injustice everywhere, like Dr. King said. And I'll shut up because I know you got another caller.
Jam, one more caller. And Larry, comment on that real quick, if you would.
All I have to say to that, and thanks, Phil, love you, man. The reality is that we need to hone in on the issues as they are, as you know well. And an injustice to any of us, irrespective of color, is an injustice to all of us. So the reality
is a hate crime. It doesn't matter if you're the same color or what. And again, that's the other thing. You know, black on black crime, white on white crime, whatever. I mean, that doesn't ever get played either. So we see the agenda here. It's just bright and shining as day. You'll have the last word with Larry Pinkney at blackcommentator.com. Go check out his work over there. It's fantastic. We carry a lot of it at deadlinelive.info, and Larry's a regular on our show now. Area code 518. We've got about a minute maybe. You've got the last word. Go ahead.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Jack and Larry. And I think you guys are doing a great job. And I just want to say, from the reports I've read, which are kind of obscure in this situation, apparently he was suspended from school for 5 days. And he was living in this neighborhood away from his school. So if he was suspended for 5 days, he might not have just been this great all-American kid we've seen. But back to that case in Oakland, you remember the police shot the guy in the back? They had him down on the floor? They killed that man outright, killed him. The cops said,
Thank you so much, Larry Pinkney. Fantastic job. Stay bold, folks.